Welcome back, everyone. This is Stop, Drop, and Roll. I am Jen Caceres, your host, and I am excited today to introduce my guest, Angela Hodgson. Angela, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. So, my business is I have the privilege of working with small to medium businesses and really helping them to harness their growth. So, look at something that they have as a great opportunity for growth where they are really excited and passionate. And then they have the reality check. Oh gosh, that means so much change. Oh gosh, have I got the team to do that? Have I got the energy to do that? Can I do that? So when people are feeling like that, they're my ideal clients because they're the people I can take on a journey to help them get the joy back in their own business and grow their own business. The main things that I do are training, looking at culture, helping people to create their strategy, working at high performing teams. But the main thing that I really, really, really enjoy is anything in relation to people.
You and I have talked a little bit about our similarity of this concept of growth. I talk about what we've outgrown, and there's some of that underlying tone within burnout of just standing up and saying, I have totally outgrown this. I know you have a story, and I'd love it if you would share that with our listeners.
I think the moment was when I was sat in front of my laptop and I was dreading pressing the start button to turn the laptop on because I was so worried about what was going to be waiting for me in this demon laptop of doom at the time. What emails would I have received? What messages would I have received? Who was waiting for me to do something? What meetings did I have on that day? And it was that trepidation of pressing start. And when I did press start and I went onto my emails and I saw all of these things come through, I just felt completely overwhelmed. And it actually led to me having a massive panic attack. And I remember being on my kitchen floor having this massive panic attack. My husband stood over me and stood with me. He just could not understand what was wrong with me. He couldn't understand why I was literally on the floor crying, couldn't breathe. It was just such a horrendous moment in my life. And that was the point when I recognized that I am totally burnt out. This is not me. This is not how I want to feel. I can't cope with feeling this way. That was the moment that I finally stopped and realized.
Wow. And I wonder how many people listening can relate to that. Like you said, the trepidation of just, first of all, pushing start, opening that
Mm.
computer, whether it's just a Tuesday morning like we're recording today, or if it's a
Mm.
Sunday night and I have to hop on to see what's waiting for
Yeah.
Monday. Oh,
Yeah.
on the floor, an actual panic attack. Were there other things that kind of came to you before that that were signaling that it was getting bad?
There was a lot of signals when I look back of things that I just ignored and thought, I can cope. I've been there before. I'm resilient. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. When you're a parent, you think, I want to be the best parent. When you're a wife, you want to be the best wife. You want to be the best at your career. You want to be the best friend and the best of everything else. And sometimes it's that realization that you just can't do that. It's just not realistic to be the best at every single thing, particularly when you're not the best version of yourself.
Mm.
You're not doing self care. You're not helping yourself. So there are lots of other moments where I realized that I'm an absolute people pleaser. So I was always trying to please everybody else. And around that same time of that massive panic attack, there was just so many people in my life who needed pleasing. When I reflect, or reflected when I stopped, they weren't giving me joy. They weren't pleasing me. They weren't helping me. They were actually draining a lot of my energy, a lot of my time, and just expecting so much from me that I just couldn't keep it up. So what I did was really prioritize, well, who do I want to please? And funnily enough, my own name was at the bottom of that list. It was like my children, my husband, my best friends, me. And that was quite a realization as well, to actually realize how far down I'd actually pushed myself. And I reflected around the saying of, when you're on an aeroplane and the air stewardess says, you've got to give yourself the oxygen mask first before giving it to other people. And I'd always thought when I heard that, oh no, well, I'd definitely give it to my children first. I want them to survive over me. But the whole analogy around that is, if you don't have the oxygen to breathe, your children are not going to survive anyway. You're not going to survive anyway. So there's just so many things that were coming into my head and so many different reflections that I was having around that time that really made me think, now is the right time to stop and fundamentally change who I am, how I behave, and what actually I'm trying to do with my life.
I think that's so important. And the fact that you say and admit and just kind of stopping to get that clarity that you were at the bottom.
Mhm.
I don't know what it did to you when you realized that, but I think for all of us who have been in that position, it's kind of like that aha moment where, okay,
Mhm.
yes, I was created to be a partner, a mom, a sister, whatever we are, but nobody's anything, we can't do anything without ourselves. We can't, like you said, be that
Mhm.
very best version. So thank you for sharing that and that story of where you were and how you got
Mhm.
to that point
Mhm.
in the concept of really stopping and pausing, because I think there's so much power in that pause of just literally stopping everything that's going on because
Mhm.
it's chaos.
Mhm.
What would you tell someone else who's kind of feeling that they're not really sure, but they're afraid to stop?
I think it happens to so many people that they're afraid to stop because they're afraid of the consequences of what that looks like. Because when you do stop, you've got to live in your own brain. You've got to live with your own thoughts. All of those thoughts you put to the back of your mind, the ones that actually keep you awake at night, you've got to sit present in that moment when you do stop. And it's a very uncomfortable thing for people to do. So when I start working with people, I start with the opposite to that. I start with what energizes them rather than, oh, you look burnt out. Let's look at that. Trying to start with well, what does actually energize you? What is it that gives you absolute joy? What gets you up in the morning? What gives you that sense of happiness and passion? Because if you can get people to open up on that, then it's easier and it's a safer place because then you can start to step back from, okay, so of all those things that are amazing and really exciting, are any of those present in your life at the moment? And that's when they'll start to say, well, no, but, or no, it's because, or no, well, when I finish this project, it will be. And then you can start to unpick those threads. But you've got to really help people to feel safe to open up. Because the worst thing would be you can see those signs, especially when you've been through what I've been through, or other people have experienced burnout, you can spot it quite quickly in others. But if someone would have stopped me back then and said, oh, Angela, you look really burnt out, actually I would have replied with defensiveness and probably a little bit attacking. I wouldn't have handled it nicely.
That's a really good point, and I hadn't thought about that before, but this kind of goes into the next step, which is dropping.
Mm,
And I often talk about those stories that we tell ourselves. So that's a really good point. We defend it. We
mm,
deflect, right?
mm,
That's not me.
mm,
You have me confused with someone else.
mm.
So in your experience and maybe your own, but what is the hardest story to drop when you're in or entering that burnout stage?
I think it's the belief system. There were so many beliefs that I had. I had no self-worth. I had no self-confidence. I had no self-belief. Other people were very shocked when I revealed I have no self-belief and self-confidence because I've always masked throughout my entire life. And that started being brought up in a very neglectful, abusive household. I had quite a traumatic and difficult childhood growing up.
Mm.
So all of those inner beliefs and inner coping mechanisms were inbuilt in me. And my ability to mask was, as sad as it sounds, actually quite a strength. People didn't know inside what was happening in my head and all of those beliefs that I had. So I had to drop my belief system. I had to refresh and start again. So I started counseling after I had my big kind of breakdown and burnout. I started counseling as the first step in my journey just to unpick all that childhood stuff that people think, oh gosh, everything starts in childhood. And you think, well, actually, it does. Like your whole belief system is built upon how you were treated as a child and how you were communicated with as a child. So I dropped the mask, and it was the hardest thing to drop because it was actually quite comforting to wear the mask and become this person who has done really well in their career, has a really senior position, drives lovely cars, goes on all these amazing experiences. But it didn't mean anything. And it didn't mean anything because I didn't value that. I value my family, my time, my freedom, my flexibility. And that mask didn't give me any of that.
Yeah. Yeah, the mask. That is such an interesting analogy. I think for any people that are listening that can relate to this, maybe trying to either peel it off or they're putting it
Mm-hmm.
on a little bit harder, because like you said, it just makes things easier. This is who I was sort of, maybe from childhood conditioned to be,
Mm-hmm.
and at some point, we don't really know what we don't know. We
Mm-hmm.
we don't realize it. So that belief system is huge about what we think is successful and what keeps us there. As you started to work through things, you said you went to therapy, which I think is, obviously is a very personal decision, but
Mhm,
speaking from experience, I too found a lot of freedom in that
mhm,
and just stepping back to really reflect on, slow down and kind of gut check. Okay, where am I now? What's
mm,
really happening to me? How is this impacting my family,
mhm.
my coworkers? So, as you reflected, besides masking, what was the biggest revelation for you?
The biggest revelation was it was very empowering to operate without the mask. And I had a lot of feedback from a lot of people that it was very inspiring to them for me to come back as this renewed person who never had a mask anymore. And it actually brought a lot of people out telling me that I'd impacted their self confidence. I'd made them not feel confident when I was wearing the mask because I came across as so confident and so, high performing and good at my job and, all those lovely feedback that I got. But actually, that had a really negative impact on my team and other people I was working with because they thought they couldn't reach my standards. They couldn't reach that pace that I was working with. So all the things I thought was doing all this inspiring thing and enabling people actually had the opposite effect. And when I had my breakdown and burnout in the corporate world, and I was off for, I think, 6 weeks, then I was furloughed for 8 weeks, I'd made this decision about dropping my corporate career. And that was a huge decision to make because I was corporate through and through. And I was, this person who loved that structure and that infrastructure. I loved the benefits and everything that came with it. When
Yeah.
I made that decision, I returned back to work and I actually did speak to people and say, look, I've had a burnout. I've been off with stress. I've been off with burnout. I was in a really, really bad place. And I'm no longer going to operate that way. So I'm going to be really honest with you. I want you to be really honest with me. I want us to collaborate and I want us to succeed together, even though I'm actually going to be exiting the business in the next 3 months. Let me help you set you up for success. There was a big drop side there and there was a big kind of change in me. But that's the
Yeah.
bit that was it was actually quite a revelation that it did work. All the things I've been
Right.
afraid of, I shouldn't have been afraid of.
Fear is Fear is just such an it's such a mean, horrible thing that comes and lives
Yeah.
in that space in our heads. You had mentioned earlier, we have to live with our brain. We have to live with the
Mm.
story in our brain. A lot of times it is just so driven by fear.
Mhm.
You've been through this and you stopped and looked at things, you dropped the mask, you started reflecting. So today in your business, how do you help people get to this place who are they love their mask. They are maybe addicted to work, but don't know it. How do you get them started?
I get them started by helping them to feel safe with me to open up. So I get really lovely feedback from my clients about how they feel like I'm such a good listener and I really help them. I'll get feedback very quickly, actually. Say, you're inside my head. It's like you're inside my head and you can see all these different things. You're like a wizard or something. That's actually really lovely feedback. So the way that I do that is by literally listening to them and showing a really keen interest in what they say and playing it back to them what they've revealed to me. And it's really interesting because for me, it's really obvious what they're saying. And oh, okay, so they said this, this, and this. That means this. But for them, they're like, oh, oh, right, okay. I didn't actually realize that's what I meant, or I didn't actually realize that that's what was happening to me. And the quicker that you can do that, and I'm quite quick at doing it because I've done it for a long time, the more they'll start saying, oh, well, what about this or what about that? And I felt this or I felt that. I actually had a coaching session and not that long ago with a new executive who I'm working with. And this coaching session was all about behavior styles. I use a behavioral profiling tool called Belbin. And within about 15 minutes of the session, he said, I've now realized why I've had issues in my relationships with my coworkers for so many years. You've let me know that so subtly and so nicely in 15 minutes. And I've had a 20-year career and I've never known those things. I want to change. So the way I
Wow.
get people to open up is either through diagnostic tools, through really listening to them, through playing things back to them. But ultimately, it starts with them setting a goal. What is it that they're trying to achieve? And what is it they can change about themselves to achieve that goal? Because it's easier to change yourself, your belief, your way of working, your thinking, than to change somebody else. That's actually quite hard to do.
I can imagine too the just thinking about that gentleman that you were helping, that sense of clarity that
Mm.
he received. How do you think that impacted him the next day?
I actually followed up with him the next day, and he said it was a bell report, and he said he took it back to his wife, and he, showed it to his wife, and kind of gone through the report, and they're like, well, yeah, that is you. He really was so open minded, so much about, okay, so now I've learned that. How do I approach that differently? And what can I do differently about those things? And one of the main things that I said to him was Stephen Covey piece was seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. Because actually, what
Mm.
he was doing was he's got so many ideas and so much pace. He can work at such significant pace, but he's not actually listening to the ideas of other people. So they feel like the ideas are being forced upon them rather than them owning it. And there's clever ways and little techniques you can do to get people to think it's their idea in the first place. But the first
Mhm.
thing is seek first to understand, because you may be trying to fix a problem that isn't a problem. You maybe tried to take the company in a direction that maybe they tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work. You may be trying to launch a new product that somebody's got this insight from a customer where that's not what they want in that product. They want this instead. So you've got to understand first, and then you understand any potential objections or issues rather than having to defend and battle your idea. So for him, it was revolutionary. Is that the word? It is now. We'll go with that. Or
Sounds
revolutionary. I
good.
don't know. We'll go with that word. But I've had a couple of follow-up sessions with him since, and it's just lovely. I really look forward to having the coaching sessions with him for that very reason.
That is so beautiful because you're impacting not just one person with what you're doing, but you're impacting an entire family and an entire
Mm,
organization.
mm,
I think about observing in a sense here of where we'll take yourself, for example, where you've landed. And then we can even think of the gentleman that we just spoke about, looking at where you're at, sort of meeting yourself where you're at. And it sounds like in what you were helping him through, and I know maybe for myself as well, when I think about finally getting that clarity of, okay, I need to do something different. I'm showing
mhm.
up in a certain way. How do those wounds from burning out, how do those show up as you're starting to really look at yourself and go, okay, I've been doing this for this many years. I've been talking this way, thinking this way, all of these things. And there are wounds, there are sort of battle scars, if you will. Are those showing up when you're helping them?
I think for me, it's all about triggers. So there'll be certain situations that I'll be in which I'll find quite triggering because of my childhood, because of situations I've been in the workplace or wherever that may be. And now I've got much better coping mechanisms with dealing with those triggers. So, for example, a trigger for me is the sense of feeling rejected. If I feel like somebody has rejected me or they weren't happy with a piece of work that I've done, that in the past would have really spun me out, where I would overthink that situation and, oh God, oh my God, they must think I'm an absolute nightmare, and oh, I've done the worst job ever. And I really berate myself and I really make myself just feel rotten, feel horrible about myself. Whereas now I do the seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. So I talk to my clients and I say, I'm here to make you look amazing. Together, we're such a power force. We can do so much together. You couldn't do this on your own. I couldn't do this on my own. You know the business. I know the tools or the technique or the framework that we're going to try and do. Let's collaborate. And I just feel so much more confident now because I know which bit I'm adding into it. I'm not trying to do the whole thing. I know the bits that I'm adding in. And that's what I try to help clients to do as well. What is your value add? What are your superpowers? Where do you look at a situation? You know, I can make a significant difference there. And are you? Are you making that difference? Or are you sitting on the sidelines, observing other people doing things and thinking, I'll just leave them to it? Do you care enough for it? Does it give you joy? Does it give you passion to use your superpowers?
Superpowers. Just saying that word makes you feel empowered,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Like automatically, I have a cape on my back. I don't know. There's just something there.
I'm
Um,
flying through the air.
I think it's just that even if it's a bad thing, and I say that very loosely, but if it's something negative that comes out in a coaching session where you recognize something in me, that's okay because that means that I have room to grow.
Mhm.
Just doing some of that self reflection and observing, okay, this is where I really am. This is kind of just is what it is. It's where I have to go to do better and to feel better and to make everybody else ultimately better.
Mm.
What do you think are maybe some of the things missing? And I don't know about in UK versus in the United States, but what are some of the things missing in the organizations that you're working with around burnout and leadership development?
I think open communication and trust are the main things that I see missing, where it comes back to that mask I was saying earlier. There's still a bit of a stigma around revealing that you feel burnt out, revealing that you can't cope anymore, the pressure's got too much. They're quite significant words that people use. So I tend to use all the well-being wheel, and it's got colours on it that go kind of like traffic light colours from green to red. And I introduce that very early on of working with a client. Where are you on this wheel? Because if on that day that I'm trying to do something with them, a coaching session, facilitate a workshop, wherever it may be, if they're in the red zone, they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, they can't think straight, and then you're trying to talk to them about, oh, the future strategy of the business will be X, Y, Z. Are they really going to be able to make that switch? Probably not. So it's
Yeah.
trying to make and create safe spaces and use little techniques like that where you just have that moment of release. I use a lot of anonymous tools as well. So there's a tool I absolutely love called Slido, which is an anonymous voting tool. So I can build questions and put them up on the screen and ask people these questions. And that very quickly creates safe spaces because people can see the opinions of other people. And they can either say, oh, actually, I'm out on a bit of a limb here. It's only me who kind of thinks that, but I'm going to fight for it. Or they can think, oh, actually, I've read all those things from other people. Oh, I'm fine with my bit now. So things like that enable people to very quickly reconnect into what it is that the business and themselves are trying to do, create those safe spaces and enable people to feel like my contribution is actually valuable here.
Mhm. I'm hearing that in the space of developing leaders and working with leaders, there doesn't seem to be a lot of safety.
I think it just is a bit of a gap. And I think part of it is because when you work in a small to medium business, it's not like corporate. You know, in a corporate, you're a number, not necessarily a face, because there's thousands and thousands of you. In an SME, there could be 20 people. You'll know them all by name. You'll know the names of their children, their wives, their pets. You'll know what they eat for their lunch. So that
Mhm.
safety piece is you're there every day and you're very close to those people because you're there together a lot. And also, a
Right.
lot of the business is riding on you. You've got so much broad responsibility and remit because it is a small to medium business. So sometimes that safety comes from you're working with your cousin, your husband, your wife, your brother.
Mm.
So do they want to reveal how they feel when that dynamic is then impacted in the home? So there's lots of reasons why that safety piece comes in. But again, for me, it can be someone might have been promoted into a leadership level and they think everyone just knows it at leader. And they're like, well, I don't want to be the person who's going to reveal X, Y, Z. I don't want to be the one who looks silly. But everybody else is thinking the same.
Yep.
But once you create that safety and take people on that journey, it's unbelievable how much more success and how much more performance that team has and how much more they feel like, do you know what? I made a mistake. I need your help. And they know people are going to come running and help them rather than hiding and concealing mistakes. It literally
Mhm.
is a game changer.
Yeah, that experience of asking for help. That is one of those things when you finally experience that and you have the safety and you can do that, and you
Mm,
realize that the whole world or the whole organization isn't resting on your shoulders.
mhm,
It's just such a freeing feeling, a freeing opportunity, and in comes then vulnerability because, "Oh, you need help? You know what? I could use some help too,"
mhm,
where it becomes that space. We are meeting ourselves where we're at, and we are now
mhm,
doing it collaboratively as a team
mhm,
versus I'm still on that verge of burnout. So, I appreciate that piece of helping people be vulnerable as well. I
mhm,
think when you do get to that safe space, and you mentioned Slido, I think Slido is phenomenal, and
mm,
I agree with you on that because then, "Oh, nobody knows it's me, I can be honest, I can actually tell
yeah,
you
brilliant.
what I really think,"
Yeah,
and it's like, all of a sudden, you get these authentic
yeah.
professional leaders showing up
Mm,
without the mask. So
Mhm.
I think that's a really great resource if people haven't used Slido or they don't know what it is.
Mhm.
We don't work for them and we probably won't get anything for mentioning it.
But we can try.
But Slido, if you're listening, we love you.
Yeah.
All right. The next thing that I like to point out is to, and you've already really tapped into this, is listening to yourself. When it's noisy and there's so much chaos and that mask is tight, we really don't want to listen to ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, unless it's that ugly story that we need to just do more with less and keep going,
Mm.
right? So, how do you help clients step into that space of getting rid of the noise?
There's another tool I really like to use called Mural, which is a digital whiteboard. It's got fantastic functionality. Again, we don't work for them, we're not promoting them, but they are amazing. I love it.
Mhm.
And that's a really good tool that I use with my clients to help them to get rid of get rid of the noise. Because what I find is that there's actually a lot of noise in their head, and sometimes they just can't see the wood for the trees. They can't connect the dots, they can't download it all. They're talking really fast and telling me all these things, and they're onto all different subjects. So a visual tool like Slido, which has virtual post-it notes or physical post-it notes if I was face to face with them, just color coding some stuff and saying, okay, so all of that is related to strategy, all of that is related to personal, all of that is related to these projects that you're working on. Let's like prioritize them. Let's see which ones are giving you energy. Let's categorize them and use different types of categorization tools. That helps them to remove the noise because they're making sense of the volume in their head. And when you set it up on Mural, it's available 24/7. They can keep dipping in and out of those tools that you've set up for them. Now you've given them a meaningful and simple method for the rest of their lives to get rid of the noise out of their head. Whereas before, the noise was there, they didn't know what to do with the noise and they didn't know how to process it. And very quickly, I've solved that for them.
Maybe I need to work with you, Angela.
You're welcome.
Get rid of some of that noise. I think that's the power of being able to listen, to be able to hear versus you're just kind of going through the motions. You're present in the room, but like you said, that space between your ears is so noisy and so full that we can't actually listen to others. And so when I think about listening to ourself, we can't really do that until we work through some things first. We
Mhm.
really have to get to that point.
There's one other thing I just wanted to add on that as well, because sometimes, everybody can have a lot of negative self talk in our head where we say, oh, I wasn't good enough and that was really bad, or I can't believe I said that, or whatever it may be. I've named that person. So you talk about the angel or a devil on your shoulders. That person's called Gertrude to me. Shut up,
Oh,
Gertrude. And I literally tell her to shut up or be quiet. And if you give that voice, that negative voice, a persona, and you think of it as this evil character with this witch nose and mangled skin and all of that, and you think, oh, I don't want to be with Gertrude, you can make yourself laugh. You can get out of that headspace. You think, I'm not Gertrude, I'm Angela, and I'm blooming smashing it. I don't need to listen to you. So I try to convert my own negative self talk or my own noise into a
mm.
different kind of way. And that really helps me as a little technique.
Ooh, we all have a Gertrude in us.
Yeah.
And I love the name too.
But I tried to choose a name that's like not a name that I think is particularly pretty. If you had a
Well, sure.
negative person called Florence or something you think, oh, actually, I don't really resonate with the character. So choose a name or someone that you really didn't like growing up or in school or work and call that. And honestly, it really does work.
And we just hope and pray that Gertrude doesn't walk into the room. Yes, I totally understand where you're coming from. I think if we all could name that voice and
Mm,
literally, without looking completely mad, we could tell it to shut up the way that you
mm.
said, just in public, go away. You're not welcome here.
Yeah, no seat at the table here for you, Gertrude. Get off.
Love it. I love it. So, what would you say to other leaders? Let's say maybe you have a client that comes to you who says they have a person that works for them, or maybe it's their manager who
Mm,
they are recognizing is on the verge of burnout.
mm.
What could you tell other leaders to listen for, look for in a room or in a space to support those people?
You've got to really know your team, because burnout can look different for different people. So, for example, I'm a really energetic person. I, love socializing. I love talking to people. I love getting energy off other people and sharing ideas. So for me, when I'm in burnout, I'm withdrawn. I'm quiet. I struggle to communicate. I struggle to find my way. I can't listen. I can't switch on. I don't really want to socialize. Whereas for
Mm.
other people, they're the opposite to me. They're already very quiet. They're already can be seen as withdrawn, and they may become erratic. They may be speaking to lots of different people, speaking really fast all of a sudden. So it's the same thing, it's burnout, but how it's displaying itself can be different for different people, because people inherently are different. So it's hard to give a generic answer in terms of what that looks like. You've got to know the person and start to spot that they're behaving differently, communicating differently, acting differently, saying different things. But the main thing for me is normally in the workplace when you start spotting differences in their work. So if before they always did things on time, they always turned up on time, the quality of the work was always good. They were always, diligent in what they were doing. And then all of a sudden you start spotting errors, you start spotting that they're not really that bothered. There's some physical signs that you can see that something's different with that person. It might not be behavior, it might be a physical thing, or it might be what they're saying or how they're thinking. So you've got to look at it quite holistically.
And sometimes we don't see those things immediately. It takes
Mm-hmm.
time for them to show up, but I do
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that lens
Mm-hmm.
of just looking at someone, and if they are completely different than they would normally be, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that would be best to have a conversation or just pay more attention.
But you can start, if you're using some of the tools I mentioned earlier, like the well-being wheel, it just makes it easier because you start spotting patterns. Oh, hold on. Well, when we've done a check-in in the team meeting for the last 3 team meetings, that person's been on red. When you're having one-to-ones, use the well-being wheel in that. So they check in at the beginning of a one-to-one. I'm on amber, I'm on red, I'm on whatever. If you're delegating a piece of work to them, ask them, how are you feeling at the moment? Do you have space for this work? Seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. It's all of those things that I've mentioned throughout the podcast. All of those are little tricks to help you be more observant and have more data or evidence around your belief around how you think they're feeling.
We should share too that you don't have to have all of these tools. We can invent some of them on our own
Yeah, for
if
sure.
they're not available to us. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that in meetings, sometimes just saying, I think you said it could be a color, it could be a number. So coming up with whatever works for you
Mm-hmm.
as a leader. Hey, team, we're going to meet today on a scale of 1 to 5. Where are you as far as overload or stress
Mm-hmm.
or those kinds of things? And I have even seen it as far as going into, all right, let's give me your personal and your professional, because if you're not
That's
okay at
clever.
home, you're not
Mm-hmm.
okay at work, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. A lot of that depends on the culture of the team, but I love the
Mm-hmm.
tool that you're mentioning. Just want to mention to the listeners that if you don't have all of those, you can sort of invent things that work for you.
I think invent it with the team as well. Do something that is
Mm,
actually quite silly. I'm feeling are you feeling sausages today or are you feeling a steak?
yeah.
And whatever the food groups are in between, it can create the scale based on wherever you want it to be. But something that is actually quite meaningful you in your workplace or is quite silly. There's something else I use as well, which again is a little technique. I have squirrel, and that's a word that I use with all my clients. And it basically means if things are going off on track, if people are waffling, if you don't understand what they're saying, or you think the behaviors are not very good, you can call squirrel and people will check their own behaviors, check their own thoughts, check, actually, do I understand what they're talking about here? And that's a really quick technique. And every time I tell it to people, they're always like, yeah, yeah, there's squirrel. Never going to use that. I'm guaranteed every client I've ever worked with uses squirrel,
Love
because it's a
that.
safe, quick way to say it rather than saying to someone, oh, I don't understand that, or I feel overwhelmed, or, oh, I'm not really happy the way you're speaking to me. It's just
Mhm.
such a quicker, easier way to do it. So that's
Yeah.
free for anybody. And you don't need a tool around that. You just need a word.
Right, right. I like your encouragement to get silly with it, because then
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like I'm getting reprimanded or someone's
Mhm.
calling me out. It's just hey, you need to check yourself, squirrel.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
Wow.
like when we were saying before about the check-in piece and where are you on scale 1 to 5 and all of that type of stuff. Be brave as the leader. On that well-being meal, you don't have to be green every time. If you're
Mm,
feeling red, be red. Tell people I am in the red.
yeah, good
Because if
point.
you are vulnerable and you explain why you're in the red, People are more likely to say they are too. Otherwise, everybody just says, I'm in the green, and they're not.
Right. Right. Like, "How are you today?" "I'm fine."
Yeah.
And you just go on, and no one asks, no one goes
Yeah.
any deeper than that. Of
Yeah.
course, we don't want everyone to unreal, everything
Mhm.
that's going, "I'm terrible," right? And then go into it. Uh, but but I think there is some real power in that, again, going back to and I know there are some really big buzzwords out there right now that are getting overused, and quite frankly, I'm kind of frustrated about it because I think they're really good words, but
Mm,
authenticity, you know,
mm,
is a buzzword right now, but what else are we
mm,
be yourself. I mean, if you
mhm,
can't show up, then you're just being someone else, and we didn't
mhm,
hire someone else. We don't wanna work with someone else, so, yeah, thank you for encouraging leaders to be authentic. I think
mm,
that's a great place to start with the team.
mhm.
So when we consider moving forward and growing and getting sort of this evolution or evolving in this process of burnout, what is one thing that somebody could do today if they think that they're on the edge of burnout? Where can they start?
By checking in with themselves. So everything starts with using your phrase, but we were just talking about authenticity. Be authentic with yourself. Recognize the signs in yourself. Recognize something is different and sit in that moment. Journal it, write it down, think about it, talk to somebody, use ChatGPT,
Yeah.
speak to your therapist, whatever it may be. You need to start to get it out, because if you don't get it out and you don't start to process why you're thinking or feeling differently, you're potentially going to continue to spiral and continue to go down, because there's nothing that's going to make you go up if you don't fix whatever that thing is that's causing those feelings or thoughts. And sometimes, as you said earlier, it can be that mix of personal and professional. I've always found in my life that if one of those things is unstable, I'm fine. I can actually cope really well. But when both are not
Mm.
stable, that is burnout for me. And that is what caused my massive breakdown, way back when, 5 years ago, because I had so much stuff going on in my personal life and so much stuff in my professional life. I just could not cope.
Yeah.
Could I have done something earlier on those things? Absolutely. Did I? No. But you've got to hold yourself true. You've got to proactively do something, because only you can fix you.
Only you can fix you. Wise words, absolutely. I'm curious, just as we wrap things up here, it sounds like you're working a lot with people who they're just discovering so many things about themselves.
Mhm,
What about people, and this was sort of my thing. I'll just take this as a personal hit here. I was addicted to work. Work was
mhm,
quote unquote saving me from the realistic fires at home that I didn't
mhm,
want to deal with.
mhm.
What if you've lost sight of who that person is?
Then create it. Who do you
Mm,
want that person to be? Think back to when you was a little girl or a little boy and what your vision was in life. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be different. I wanted to go to the moon. I wanted to discover. I wanted to explore. I wanted to make a name for myself. If I go back to those roots, that's about creativity. That's about innovation. That's about doing something that is unbelievable and not that many people can do. That is about special superpowers. That is me. That is still me. That was me back when. That is me now. So if you struggle to think, who do I want to be? And am I that authentic person? Go back to your roots, because that will help you to think, is that still true? Do I still want to be an astronaut? And what is it that you want to be? Or who do you want to be now? If you fast forward in your life, what do you want to look back on your life and think, I'm 43 now. Angela at 43 was amazing because what's the end of that sentence?
mm.
Because for me, the end of that sentence is because she prioritized her family, because she made a difference to different business owners, and because she really took care of herself and made herself incredible. That's what I want to be looking back when I'm 80 and saying,
I hope we all want to say those kinds of things about ourselves, and I hope that we can
mm,
all get to that space. Angela, if someone wants to work with you and they want to find you and
mhm.
have a conversation. Tell us, how can we get in touch with you? Where can we find you?
So the primary platform that I use is LinkedIn, and my handle for LinkedIn is, if you go linkedin.com/in/Angela Hodgson, and it's Hodgson, Hodgson. That's the primary way to kind of get in contact with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. All these things I've been talking about today, there's many, many, many more stories, tools, tips, ideas on my LinkedIn. So please do follow along for that. But I actually have a little free gift for your listeners. I
Oh,
really want people to use this free gift. It's a little quiz that's called Is Your Business Burnt Out? And it's a free quiz that helps you to explore, is it burnt out? Is it brilliant? And when you do the quiz, you then get this business brilliance blueprint, which gives you some really action-packed tips and insights. It's going to help you to build a brilliant business. But more importantly, it's going to help you to do that without burning out. So hopefully in the show notes, you'll have the link for the freebie. You'll have the link for my LinkedIn. Please do reach out. I love having genuine conversations with people in the DMs or just little virtual coffee chats.
that's exactly how we met. So I'm so glad that thank
Mm.
you for sharing. Thank you for sharing the freebie. I think that there will be a lot of people that will take advantage of that because there's not very many free things out there in the world. And it doesn't cost anything to have an opportunity to speak with you. I will just tell the listeners, she is super active on LinkedIn and authentic. There are a lot of silly photos and just very real, good things about Angela Hodgson out there on LinkedIn and what she's doing with businesses. So definitely take a look at that here on the end of the episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, Angela. It's been wonderful having you. I've learned some things. I hope our listeners have learned some things. You are phenomenal on burnout. Love it.
Thank you so much. I've genuinely had a lovely conversation. It's been so nice to feel safe myself in sharing all of those stories and my personal experiences.
Thank you.
I hope you're feeling inspired and encouraged as you reflect, observe, listen, and evolve through whatever you need to today. Remember, true leadership starts within. For more resources, visit perpetualcapacity.com. Until next time, keep growing and leading on this journey we call life.